Now that water and the leaf, that leaf where they cover the water, to put inside, not dey easy. If na only be my oga, 9 day, I for not be an I for don't go back. But because of the children, before I would say I don't want to leave one of my children. When I go, I would worry about them.
Only taja o máa fẹ́ ti wá gan-an. Àárí bíi ti wọlé gan rí bó tilẹ̀ máa fi wọlé gbogbo bẹ́ẹ̀ ṣe ń wo bí ìsìn omi ní gbogbo ẹ̀.
Tómi bá wọnú ilé yìí, ó ń dé ojúgun nínú yàrá yìí, tí ò ní sán igbọ́n, tí ó máa gbẹnu ọ̀nà ṣẹ́ síta. Omi yẹn pọ̀. Bó ti sùn sínú ẹ̀, dápẹ́ tí n bá ti gbọ́n ẹsẹ̀ nù, bàbá sórí bẹ́ẹ̀dì, tó bá tún dàárọ̀, ẹsẹ̀ náà látò kó mi sí.
But when water come now, you used to blame the snake. You say when the water come inside and outside will be almost the same thing.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to COP. Welcome to Glasgow.
The COP26 Climate Change Conference fell short of delivering fully on its promise on climate finance and other climate change measures in Africa. But is it possible for COP27 in Egypt to make up for the shortcomings of Glasgow? The African Development Bank, in its African Economic Outlook 2022 report, says Africa needs between $1.3 trillion and $1.6 trillion in financing between 2022 and 2030 to effectively address climate change. Recall that in 2009, the Copenhagen Accord, which detailed the resolve from the climate conference, contained short and long-term financing agreements for developing countries. Developed countries came to Copenhagen with clear promises to fund mitigation and adaptation actions in developing countries. These countries, according to the Copenhagen Accord, promised to provide between $30 billion from 2010 to 2012 and a long-term finance of a further $100 billion a year by 2020 from a variety of sources. 10 years later, estimates from the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development showed that this funding had only hit $79.6 billion, just 2% more than in 2018. The data further showed that Asian countries on average received 43% of the climate finance in 2016 to 2019, while Africa received 26%. But what percentage of these amounts goes to women, most of whom are at the receiving end of these climate change issues in Africa? Climate change remains one of the greatest challenges battling humanity, but the countries feeling the impact of this development the most are the third world countries, especially the girls and women in Africa. And this is why Center for 21st Century Issues is leading the campaign on climate finance for women, especially local women in indigenous communities. The campaign is to ensure that women and girls are not left out of the funds received by African countries.
Our organization responds to the challenges of the 21st century by mobilizing the voices of the vulnerable, the socially excluded and marginalized into policy processes from local to global. Our thematic focus include climate change and environment, education, water and sanitation, food security, peace and conflict, and we mainstream gender and youth into all these thematic focuses.
This campaign is also bringing to fore some of the plights of the women in affected countries, taking into consideration the Paris Agreement on Finance and Integration and how it must be conscious of gender equality.
And under the climate change and environmental team, we've been working on gender and climate finance. We've been working with other partners at the local and international levels to ensure that climate finance gets into the hands of local women especially, so that they will be able to take local climate actions.
During a survey to ascertain the damage caused by the climate change and the losses incurred by those badly affected, Nigerian women lamented how difficult life has been, especially with little or no help or involvement by the government.
My name is Teresa Robinson. I said Mama put.
Orúkọ mi ni Esther Lowonle. I'm Osun State ni mí.
Orúkọ mi ni Mrs. Funke Eniola.
My name is Joy Ogbonna.
The challenge what I feel well now, this water, when the water big, the water never reach the time. When the time come, the water they big well, and again one leaf, the leaf could cover the water. To even put inside for me to go carry my, because I used to cook for house here. If that leaf come by this kind of time now, if I don't say anything, I will say sit down. I go wait until they come from school first before we come and put the canoe together.
Ọwọ́ ọ̀tá tí mo tún wà ń bí báyìí gbogbo ẹ̀ tí ń jọra wọn tẹ́lẹ̀ mo ní ṣọ́ọ̀bù ṣùgbọ́n mo ṣáà ń yí mọ́ nígbà dárin méjì omi yẹn wọnú ilé yẹn mo gbìyànjú pé kí n ṣe lè sùn síwájú kò sí agbára àti kúrò mo ṣáà fi ń yí mọ́ láti gbà yẹn ṣùgbọ́n gbà kòrò wá dé kòrò yẹn ló wá fọ́ gbogbo ẹ̀ tán mo ti ní ṣọ́ọ̀bù tẹ́lẹ̀ ìrówó ṣọ́ọ̀bù sàn oníṣọ́ọ̀bù ní kí n wá kó ẹrù mi sáré pé wàhálà jókòó tó wà ní Ajégúnlẹ̀ ń bí báyìí omi máa ń yọ wọ́n lẹ́nu tó dẹ̀ pé ó ń dojúgun tó mi bá dé ẹlòmíì máa kó ọmọ sùn orí títì kọ́ńfẹ́ẹ̀sì ẹlòmíì máa kọ́ ọmọ lọ sílé àwọn ẹbí ẹ̀ àlọ́mọ gbé bẹ́ẹ̀ irú èmi ohun tó wá gbẹ̀yìn ìgbà tó pọ̀ Òṣogbo ni mo lọ sọ́dọ̀ ọ̀rẹ́ mi tí mo ti lọ mọ́lẹ́jì ìgbà tó dóṣù kọkànlá tó mi yẹn lọ ó ní mo tún padà sí Èkó padà tí omi bá wọnú lẹ́yìn ó ń dé ojúgun nínú yàrá yìí tí ò ní sọ igbọ́n tí ó máa gbẹnu ọ̀nà ṣẹ́ síta omi yẹn pọ̀ àtìgbà yẹn gan aláfẹ́ fìlì ẹ̀ Òṣogbo àti fìlì ẹ̀ bó ti sùn sínú ẹ̀ tẹ́pẹ́ tí n bá ti gbọ́n ẹsẹ̀ nù bàbọ́ sórí bẹ́ẹ̀dì tó bá tún dàárọ̀ ẹsẹ̀ náà látò kó mi sí omi yẹn dẹ̀ máa ń gbóṣù mẹ́ta kó tó di kó tó máa lọ.
The water is too much. When the host water come now, even inside this room, we don't live inside. Everything inside this house is already damaged because of the water. So the mosquito, snake used to come out anytime. We just come out from inside the bush. But when water come now, it used to blend the snake. They say when the water come inside and outside will be almost the same thing.
Àríbi ti wọlé gun rí bóòtù la máa fi wọlé gbogbo bẹ́ẹ̀ ṣe ń wo bí ìsìn omi ní gbogbo ẹ̀ mi ò lè tajà ó máa affect mi gan-an gbogbo àdúgbò máa kún ni omi tẹ̀rí bí ń ṣe lè kékeré ni òjò ló ìdágún síbẹ̀ tómi bá dé báyìí gbogbo bíi máa kún rẹpẹtẹ tó máa yá wọlé ó ti tó bí 15 years gan-an ẹ̀rí gbogbo ilé kò sí àwọn tẹ́nàtì kankan nílé mọ́ gbogbo wọn ti lọ help tán bá dẹ̀ lè help community kan help wa.
Access to finance is a game changer where women are concerned, particularly in cases where climate issues come to the forefront, because they are able to use such funds to access safer and more sustainable energy sources, transition from the use of fossil fuels, for example, to LPG for domestic cooking, to transition to more sustainable livelihood patterns, to support their lifestyles or their practices as recyclers in their communities.
So for us in Center for 21st Century Issues, we try to mobilize women's movements, make them understand what climate change is all about, also let them understand that climate finance needs to flow from the developed world to the developing world because of the injustice of climate change. That is why finance to address climate change at the local level, especially for those who are on the front lines, needs to come from the developed world to the developing world. And our women are the ones on the front line, and they need this finance to adapt and mitigate the impacts of climate change.
I need to go and sell before we can able to eat. If I not go sell, it's small money dey my. If I take and go buy food store, cook, eat, I don't see money again to buy market. So now I know they take and play.
Ó wù mí àti kó kúrò. Àmọ́ mi náà dẹ̀ ti sáré títí kò sí agbára fún.
Who are the most affected when it comes to climate change? Women, especially from vulnerable communities, are the most affected because you find that most particularly in Africa.
Interventions that government has in place, some are particularly for women. The level of gender consideration at planning level is still wanting. because even when gender is mentioned in a proposal or a plan, it is not followed to the letter to ensure that what was mentioned at planning level is actually emphasized at implementation or even realized at impact level. So that is still a challenge.
As we're preparing for COP27, there are a whole lot of issues that are going to be negotiated there. And one of the important things for us as women that we are going to be monitoring and be looking at is the climate finance negotiations. We're also going to be looking at the negotiations surrounding loss and damage.